Today I'm going to make a really nice Christmassy ginger cake. Now this is based on a recipe I saw Adam Ragusa make on his channel, and in fact he borrowed his recipe from a very traditional one. I'm going to be making a slight twist on this, but there are links in the video description to all of my sources here, including Adam's video and the recipe I adapted this from. So let's make a ginger cake. I'm adapting this recipe from cups and ounces and things like that, so I will put metric conversions for these things in the video description. There'll be a recipe in there. But what we've got here is 200 grams of flour. We're going to have 300 grams of molasses, in fact black treacle is what we call it here in the UK, same kind of thing. 1 egg. We're going to have some marmalade and dates in there, which is not part of the standard recipe, but I'm replacing the sugar in the recipe with marmalade and dates, both of which contain, well, natural sugar in this case and added sugar because it's orange jam. I've got 100 grams of dates here, and the marmalade I think I'm going to go for about 50 grams of. We're going to have 110 grams of butter, and then for spices we're going to have 1 tablespoonful of ground nutmeg, 1 tablespoonful of ground cinnamon, 2 tablespoons full of ground ginger. Then we've got half a teaspoon of salt and 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. And we're going to need some milk to mix that, which is going to be ½ cup of milk, which is about 140 ml. Dry ingredients first, so the flour and the spices and the salt and baking soda all into a big bowl. I'm just going to give that a little whisk to combine those ingredients together. Then we can set that aside. Now the wet ingredients we'll need to mix an egg into, and I don't want to curdle the egg, so we're going to go for warming a few things first, and then we'll use this milk to cool it back down again so that it's ready for the egg. At this point I'm also going to preheat my oven to 180 degrees Celsius, 350 Fahrenheit. So a bit more weighing to do. I've got to weigh out 300 grams of this black treacle, which as I say is equivalent to molasses, pretty much the same thing. Always a bit of a messy job, this one. And we've got to kind of dial it back when we get close to that 300 grams. 300 grams exactly, how about that? Okay, and then into there, these dates are going to go in as well. And I've just chopped these dates until they're in very small pieces, and you can see how sugary these are. And some of this marmalade. Now this is in place of the sugar, so I'm going to use about 50 grams of this orange marmalade. This is a traditional orange marmalade, little circle of wax paper on the top there to keep it preserved. This is a really nice traditional orange marmalade with lots of peel in there. Yeah, 55 grams. Now there's not much of it in there, so that's going to be quite subtle, but I do think the orange peel and the orange flavour is going to complement the other ingredients. Butter. I've got some nice unsalted butter here. If I was using salted butter I might dial back on the added salt. And for the butter I need 110 grams, which is equivalent to a stick of butter as they have in the States. So we'll add that in pieces until we get to 110. Let's see if I can go for exactly on 110. Okay. For these wet ingredients I now need to warm up in the microwave to melt the butter and to loosen that molasses. Don't want to get it too hot though, because we are going to have to add an egg in a minute, but I'm going to cool it back down again with this milk. So if you didn't want to use a microwave, you could do that in a pan, of course, over a really gentle heat. Okay, and that's all coming together nicely. The butter's just finishing melting there. I'll just break it up and stir it into that molasses just to finish it off. And I'll just keep on stirring that so the heat from the molasses can transfer into the butter and melt it. Just going to keep stirring until we don't see lumps of butter coming back up to the surface. I'm just going to test that with my finger. Yeah, that's too hot. If we put an egg in there right now, that would cook the egg and we'd get scrambled eggs. Not nice. While we're waiting for those molasses just to cool down, I've got this. It's a baking tin with a loose bottom, and you could line this with greaseproof paper. I've got these reusable polymer baking liners, and I find it's useful to run them under hot water before using them. It makes them conform a little bit more readily to the tin, but also the water just helps to, well, in theory, make them adhere to the sides of the thing. They're just about in place. The cake batter obviously will hold those in place when I pour it in. So that's my tin ready. Let's mix everything together. We've got that wet mix, and I'm just going to add in my milk, and the milk's come straight from the fridge, so the cool of that milk will help to moderate the temperature of this a little bit. I'm going to use the whisk for that, I think, just to bring those together. And now if I just test that, yes, that's only just above body temperature. That's going to combine with the egg without cooking it. Cracking my egg first into a glass because the other day, for the first time in my adult life, I came across an egg that wasn't fresh. I don't remember the last time I had a rotten egg, but it happened the other day, and it would be a shame to waste all of this mixture. That one looks and smells fine, so in it goes. And then I'm just going to beat that in. And then wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, and there's quite a lot of wet there. This is going to make a really, really quite loose looking batter, but let's not worry. And I'll mix that together until we've got no dry lumps of flour, until we've got a kind of smooth looking batter, but I don't want to over mix this. And we're good to go, I reckon. So, really very wet looking batter there. This is going to be a really moist cake. Okay, and here we go then. So, straight into my tin. Now we used baking soda instead of baking powder, but the acidity of the ginger and the marmalade will give it enough to break down that bicarbonate of soda and give us enough gas to raise the thing. Really jiggly, and you can see I've already put this on a tray so I don't have to handle it too much. Straight into the oven now, and we'll cook that for at least 25 minutes before we test it. Okay, 25 minutes have elapsed. I'm not expecting that this will be fully cooked yet, but we're going to check it very quickly. So all I'm going to do is just skewer into the middle. Yeah, not cooked because there's cake batter still on it. So quickly shut the oven. We'll give it another 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, so another 15 minutes have passed. That's a total of 40 minutes altogether. Let's give it another quick test. Yep, that's ready. So out it comes, and I'll just quickly show you what was happening during that test in case it wasn't very clear over at the oven. So we just stick the skewer into the middle of the cake and it comes out completely clean. That means it's cooked. Now it is still quite wobbly, but that's normal. Going to let it cool now before we try and turn this out. It probably will sink back down a little bit, but that's going to be fine. Just want to say, if you're making this recipe, wait until the really scalding hot steam has gone, obviously, and then get in there for a sniff. And wow, that right there is Christmas. Now that this has cooled down sufficiently to handle, I'm just going to turn it out of this tin, which is just a case of put that on the thing there, push that down, and then I'm just going to put it on a rack. I'm leaving the bottom on there for the moment, just really to make it easier to handle, because it is still a bit soft coming out of the oven. But we'll just unwrap that so the air can get to the sides. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good result. It has sunk in the middle, but I really expected that. This is a really moist and spongy cake. It was a very, very wet mix. So I was expecting that it would sink in the middle. That's absolutely fine. Really nice squashy cake. It will firm up a bit as it cools. We've actually got to be patient now and leave this to cool and then leave it overnight. I'll cover it and leave it overnight. It's got to absorb some moisture from the atmosphere, which will make it kind of sticky and gooey. Right, it's the next day and a change has occurred. Look at this. So the cake has sunk in the middle, as we saw, but it's gone darker and it's glistening on top with sticky, sugary molasses. So I'm really happy with how that's turned out, but it only remains now really to see what it tastes like. I think before we do, we'll just make it even more Christmassy. A little dusting of icing sugar. Okay, and let's have a look and see what this cake is like inside. And you can see that it's gone kind of dense, and you can tell this is going to be a bit chewy. And that's exactly what I wanted. So, got a nice cup of tea, got my slice of ginger cake with dates and marmalade, and look at the texture of that. It's just soft, but also kind of chewy and moist. Well, enough talk, let's get stuck in. Wow. It's rich and sweet, but also it's got all those complex flavours of ginger and cinnamon and nutmeg. And I can just pick out the orange marmalade in there as well, so that's really nice. And those dates, you can still see them in there, but they've kind of dissolved into the cake, which is really good. I'm super happy with this. It's a really lovely, really Christmassy cake. I reckon this would be actually really good with a bit of custard on it. Now this video was supposed to be a collaboration with my friend Babatunde in Nigeria. Unfortunately he's had malaria this week and he really wasn't able to do any cooking in a video. I'm happy to say he's had medicine and he is on the mend, but unfortunately he hasn't been able to make the ginger cake recipe this week. But maybe we'll see him do that in future, and I would encourage you please to head over to his channel, show him some love and wish him a happy Christmas. So there we go, Christmas ginger cake. I hope you enjoyed watching that. I really enjoyed making that and especially enjoyed eating it. It only remains really now to wish you a very Merry Christmas, and whatever you're doing at this time of year, I wish you peace and goodwill, happiness and health. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.